My NEC colleague, Deanna Farrell, who has spent far more time in far more detail than I on these issues, is going to walk through the specifics of the program the administration is advocating. I want to talk about why this is important for the economy, for the sense of economic justice in our society, and for millions of Americans. 7 times in the last generation, the Latin American debt crisis, the S&L debacle, the Mexican financial crisis, the Asian financial crisis, LTCM, the bursting of the Enron bubble, and now what's 7 before now. What has happened in the financial sector has had consequences that has led to hundreds of thousands of Americans being unemployed because of what happened in the financial sector through no fault of their own. When something breaks once, maybe it's just one of those things. When something breaks twice, maybe it's just one of those things. But when something breaks with devastating consequences 8 times in a generation, when the accidents emanating from the financial sector are causing an additional 5+ million people to be unemployed today, it is time for a fundamental change. A fundamental change in the way those institutions do business, and in particular, a fundamental change in the way those institutions are regulated. And that's why the President has made financial regulation a critical priority for our economy, because we do not want more recessions like this. We do not want more regions to go through periods of devastation as the Southwest did after the S&L crisis. We do not want more moments when the supply of credit dries up to small businesses, as took place after the LTCM bubble. We do not want savings that people rely on for their retirements to be compromised, as took place when the internet bubble was allowed to build up and to burst. So first, for the economy, we're for financial regulation. Second, it is the right moment. Those of you who know me know that I've had experience with the financial sector, that I'm not usually thought of as someone who would be called a raging populist. But I have to tell you that the spectacle of financial institutions that received billions of dollars of assistance from the government, without which they would not be in existence today. Institutions that use sophisticated computer programs to assure that if checks are bounced, the checks are handled in a way that maximizes the number of overdraft penalties that individuals have to pay. That when those institutions say we shouldn't have a consumer financial regulator because it would stifle financial innovation, I think it's a bit rich. And I don't think they should win. I think we did the right thing. It was necessary to provide support to financial institutions to avoid what could have been a far, far worse cataclysm earlier this year. But President Kennedy said something powerfully important in his inaugural address when he asked all Americans not just to think about what their country could do for them, but what they could do for their country. And the financial institutions who have directly or indirectly been the beneficiaries of all of this support can, should, and must use this moment to think about what they can do for their country by accepting the need for regulation that ensures that their actions protect consumers. You know, we always talk, when we talk about finance, about incentives. If you have a regulator whose job it is to make sure that the banking system is healthy and profitable, guess what? That regulator is not going to mostly focus on protecting consumers and reducing fees to consumers. That's why we think the establishment of a separate consumer financial regulator is so profoundly important. If you have a system where you have a group of different regulatory agencies and the bank gets to choose which one's going to be their regulator, you're laughing, but that is actually the system we have in America today. It's called charter flipping. You want to be a thrift, you get regulated this way. You want to be a bank, you get regulated this way. You want to be a state bank, you get regulated another way. If you have competition among the regulators, the leverage sits with the private institution, not with the public institution. We believe, just as those in the financial sector do, that incentives matter, and we want to change the incentives to strengthen regulation. So the second thing is there's a very strong element of right and wrong here after what has happened. And I can tell you that the president and all of us in the administration are very determined here. These are complicated subjects. We want to get it right. We will welcome the input from anybody who can help us get it right. After the number of accidents we've seen over the last 30 years, God knows that these set of problems need all the thinking that we can get. But we are not interested in compromising with those who see these issues through the prism of their continued profitability and their continued ability to operate within the paradigms of the past. The president came to Washington, determined to change Washington and change the way in which business and government is done. That's why this administration has a very different set of standards and approaches to lobbyists and the inclusion of lobbyists in its ranks than previous administrations have. What we are able to do now, after this financial crisis, with financial regulation, is a very important embodiment of that commitment. And that is part of the reason we are so determined. The third thing is, what's this mean for Americans? And here I'll just say something as an economist. It is no secret that people's paychecks do not go as far as they once did. They do not go as far as they did at the beginning of the decade. Well, there are two ways to make people's paychecks go further. One is to raise their paychecks, and that's why we're focused on all kinds of productive investment. That's why we're focused on creating jobs, and that's surely the most important thing we're doing to raise people's incomes. The other is to reduce the costs of the things they use their paychecks for. That means reducing inappropriate credit card rates. That means containing predatory lending. That means preventing taking advantage of people with overdraft fees. That means addressing a whole set of practices in the financial sector that cause consumers to pay more than they have to. And when consumers pay more than they have to, they have less income to spend on the things they need. And so I would say to you that the reason financial regulation is such an important issue is not any single reason, but because it is central to protecting consumers and raising their effective incomes. Because after what has happened, it is fundamental to questions of right and wrong and to how well our society functions to correct the errors of the past. And because we need a financial system that is more constructive in being consistent in its promotion of prosperity. Deanna will talk to you about the details of our approach, but I want to underscore just finally how central this is to the President's agenda of economic renewal, and how determined we are to see this as a demonstration that government can work for all of the people. Thank you very much.